All right. I should be live. It's possible I'm not, but we're going to pretend I am anyway and go ahead and get things started so we can discuss everything we need to talk about tonight regarding preparedness, the relevancy of it for why you need to get ready for more things to happen here in the United States as well as abroad, and for this global conflict to continually intensify because it currently is. So I'm glad to see everybody tonight. While everyone is still coming into the live stream, I want to mention that Midway USA is the biggest supporter of the channel. Thanks to them, I can do live streams like this one, give you this information, and hopefully also provide you with a good outlet for preparedness-related gear. So big thanks to Midway USA. And of course, the live streams are themselves sponsored by magicprepperbeef.com, which is a great place to go if you want high-quality, shelf-stable, freeze-dried beef products. Sous vide, ribeye, New York strip, filet mignon. It's expensive, but it's very high quality, and you will have steak in the apocalypse because this stuff will last 10 years minimum, probably much longer, in the packaging that it comes in. So if you use the code MAGICPREPPER, you'll get 15% off in order to save some money off this not inexpensive product. But this is a luxury item you add to your preparedness pantry, not something that you just get started out with when it comes to prepping. So if you need beef in your pantry because you have tons of rice and beans, maybe that's a good way to do it. And of course, magicprepperbeef.com does support these live streams. So there's links in the description as well in case you forget the website name. Good to see everybody. 5x5s have come in. We know we're good to go here. We got 10x22 from Froyo Mama. We got Eagle Claw 6 with the 5x5. We also have Concerned Citizen with the 5x5. Hello from New Hampshire, says John D. And I say hello from North Dakota as well. Okay. We have some great people here. We have great people from all over the country. Make sure you're networking and communicating with each other in the chat and use it as a way to try to build a little bit of a larger network because we never know when things are going to get a little bit crazy around here, right? And in fact, they are. Cherokee Survival, always good to see you. Glad you're here. David Baize. I don't know. I just like saying your name different every time, I guess. But thank you for the 5x5. There's a lot happening. So we're going to start with the home front tonight and the chaos that's been going on here and the expectation of additional attacks that you should currently be preparing for. And the reason for that is because we are seeing this unraveling of our society kind of happening right before our eyes. And with the incendiary environment that we're currently in politically because of this upcoming election being closer and closer every single day, we have to expect more of these types of events to occur. And there's also some trigger events, or at least dates, that you should be concerned about as well coming up here close. And we just had an incident that actually demonstrated that directly. So to get started, we're going to talk about a Pakistani national who was arrested for plotting to commit an atrocity in New York City. This is from Eyewitness News 7. This is from September 6th, so just 3 days ago. And in case you're new here, we do stories from the previous week that are relevant to preparedness, and we might go back further to build context in case we need it. And of course, if you're here on replay, crew, make sure you say what's up because you guys are awesome. 20-year-old man arrested in Canada for alleged ISIS-inspired plot to attack Jewish people in NYC. A Pakistani national in Canada plotted to slaughter as many Jewish people as possible before he was charged with attempting to provide material support to ISIS, federal prosecutors said Friday. Mohammed Shazeb Khan, 20, was arrested this week in Canada, where he planned to travel to New York to carry out a mass shooting at a Jewish center in Brooklyn, according to the criminal complaint. Just so you're aware, and just something I like to kind of reiterate every so often, the border between Canada and New York is like completely unsecure and has the most encounters with KST, known or suspected terrorists, out of any other portion of the border. So be aware of that because these people know they can get in from Canada quite easily. Khan began posting on social media and communicating on an encrypted messaging app about his support for ISIS last November, the complaint said. An NYPD official describes Khan's plan as aspirational, not operational. Khan was looking to target a Jewish center located in Brooklyn, but was not 100% set and appeared open to suggestion. And then he went on to talk to undercover agents about his plans, about where he could get different types of weapons and everything else related to it. But here's the part that you should really be thinking about right now as we get closer and closer to this time. The defendant is alleged to have planned a terrorist attack in New York City around October 7th of this year, with the stated goal of slaughtering in the name of ISIS as many Jewish people as possible, Attorney General Merrick Garland said in a statement announcing the charges. Jewish communities, like all communities in this country, should not have to fear that they will be targeted by a hate-fueled terrorist attack. Khan allegedly told the undercovers October 7th and October 11th are the best days for targeting Jews. October 7th is the anniversary of the Hamas attack on Israel. October 11th is Yom Kippur. So, we already have an example of somebody plotting an attack on October 7th, or at least right in that vicinity, on a specific ethnic group here in the country. So, I don't doubt for a second that there could be other similar copycat style attackers that are making their plans as well, but haven't been caught by the dragnet quite yet. And of course, October 7th being that 1 year anniversary from the Israel-Gaza conflict would make a lot of sense for some of these groups to try to leverage, because it would be obvious for why they're doing it, and it might even garner them support from certain subsects of the country. So I would be very cautious around that time period, just based on this information and based on logic in many ways, right? It doesn't matter if you are part of a certain group or not. If you are in a metropolitan area during that time, there's a good chance you could get caught up in it, even if you're not associated with the groups that are being targeted. So be aware of that. I think it's a good just preparedness and awareness concept that October 7th region, that area, you know, the surrounding dates, probably a little bit of a higher risk level. So that's the first thing we're going to talk about tonight. Now, Florida Sheepdog 1 says it's impossible. They have strict gun control there in New York City. Well, you know what? Who knows? I mean, they didn't even know they had crazy tunnels going under the entire town. So what do I know? But let's move forward and talk about how we're also getting additional activity regarding our children at schools. And there's some things here that I want you to really consider as we talk about this current situation. Because as a parent, if you have kids in school, like, you should be very aware of these different scenarios unfolding and how you would react to this information. Because I think it's very important to kind of monitor what's happening here. And this just happened today, September 9th, right? Or let's see, yesterday. I don't remember. Either way, it's very similar to today being yesterday. Several New Jersey schools closed, children charged after shooting threats posted online. Several schools in South Jersey are closed on Monday, September 9th, 2024, due to a shooting threat that was posted to social media that named several schools on Sunday night. The post, which may have originated from TikTok, threatened that there would be a shooting at 5 schools in South Jersey, including Woodbury Junior Senior High School, Bow Middle School, Holy Angels Catholic School, Hayden Heights Junior Senior High School, and Oak Valley School. Early Monday, officials with the Harrison Township Police Department said that at least 3 juveniles were taken into custody after these threats were made. One from Woodbury, one from Glassboro, and a 15-year-old from Malika Hill. Now, it seems like they took this threat seriously and actually apprehended the people who were behind it, which is why there may not have been an actual attack, but at the same time, the schools were closed because of the threat level regardless, right? So, understand, in Washington Township, police also said on social media that a student at Bunker Hill Middle School was charged for making threats as well. These kids might be doing this for clout. They might be doing it for attention. They might be doing it because it's the hot topic right now. But if you have a child who's at a school where these things are happening, I mean, do the bare minimum and make sure you keep them home, right? I mean, like, this shouldn't have to be said. But time and time again, we see these threats are made, and the kids are just still at school. And this is something we're going to talk about related to what happened in Georgia here in just a second. But I just want to kind of show you what happened here to give you something to consider. And I expect more of this stuff to happen because, unfortunately, we're in a very disrespectful society at this point in time. And these kids, even if they think it's funny or whatever it is they did this for, or they were actually planning it, because that's quite possible, these types of things are more likely to occur based on what's happening in our culture right now. It's very unfortunate, but you should take this stuff very seriously if you have children in the school system. This is from the Glassboro Police Department. Through the collaborative efforts of several agencies involved, 2 juveniles, one from Woodbury and one from Glassboro, have been located, identified, and arrested regarding the threats made to our schools on social media. We want to thank all agencies involved as well as the members of the community who spoke up and provided information to assist us in the quick resolution of this incident. Although there is no active threat to our schools, the added security will remain in place, and we hope this can provide parents, educators, and staff with peace of mind while attending school today. So what I will say is that it does seem that this police department in Glassboro took the threat seriously, actually arrested people, and maintain an additional force of security for the schools thereon after, which is kind of, the base standard, the bare minimum, but at the same time, not what always happens. So if you see this stuff happening, have a concept in mind of how you'll react to it and what you will do as a family, right? I know not everybody can homeschool or not everybody wants to or whatever it is. So if your kids are in school and these types of threats are occurring, you should already know what you're going to do, right? You're calling out of work sick, right? Or you're just not showing up or whatever it is. You're getting your kids, you're not letting them go. Whatever it takes to make sure your kids stay safe. I mean, obviously that should be our priority. And for some reason, we often offload the safety and security of our children onto other people and then assume that if they're allowing the risk level to reach a certain point, that it's probably okay. But your risk level should be at a point no matter what, and then anytime it's surpassed, you should take action. At least that's how I look at it. So, and I'm not saying you should show up in tactical gear and start defending the building or whatever it is, like in the sense of like an unknown threat. But what I'm trying to say is like, at least just know when you're not going to let them go to school or when you're going to pull them out. Like based on this stuff, there's a lot going on regarding that. But the reason I brought this up is because, well, first off, like I said, the schools were closed today because of this threat. But the same thing, unfortunately, occurred in Georgia in many ways with an advanced warning, and the same actions were not taken. And that's concerning to me because it also shows that even when there is a threat that's actually known, the people who are in charge of making those decisions might not make the right decision. And that's another thing you have to consider and be aware of. Bakari Akil Bey, peace to you as well. D's Nuts, hey yo, I always have to say your name when I see you because it's my opportunity, All right, so let's go ahead and talk about a little bit about this whole Georgia situation. Not to get into the nitty-gritty of it or anything along those lines, because there's a lot going on there that we don't need to touch base on because we're trying to focus on the preparedness aspect of these events. And I'm trying to show you the level of chaos and criminal behavior and the risk assessment of our current situation here in the country. But I also want to let you know that there were warnings, advanced warnings of this occurring, and it still was allowed to happen. So you shouldn't just trust things to do what they're supposed to, right? Like, I think we should know that by now, but I wanted to verify that you're aware of that because what I just showed you from New Jersey was a proper, at least in my opinion, like a proper approach to how to shut that down. Arrest the people involved with the threats, shut the schools down, and then add additional security thereafter. I mean, that seems reasonable. What happened here is questionable because of maybe not having all the facts quite yet, but this is concerning to me as a parent, right? Georgia shooting suspect's mother warns school of emergency, U.S. media reports. This is from 1 day ago. The mother of the suspect in last week's Georgia shooting contacted his school to warn of an extreme emergency and asked them to check on her son the day of the attack, U.S. media reports. Both the suspect's mother and grandmother were in contact with the school prior to the shooting, according to reports. Colt Gray, 14, is accused of carrying out a shooting at Appalachia High School that left 4 people dead and 9 injured. He faces 4 counts of first-degree murder. The revelations come after authorities also charged the suspect's father, Colin Gray, with second-degree murder, manslaughter, and child cruelty. Officials accuse him of allowing his son to possess an AR-15 style rifle. That's a whole nother thing, but this is what's happening right now. The Washington Post obtained text messages sent by the boy's mother, Marcy Gray, to her sister explaining that she had asked school officials to check on her son the morning of the shooting. I was the one that notified the school counselor at the high school, Miss Gray wrote. I told them it was an extreme emergency and for them to go immediately and find my son to check on him. The suspect's aunt, Ani Brown, provided the text messages and call logs to the Post. The suspect's mother later confirmed the records to the newspaper. Ms. Brown also confirmed the text exchanges to other U.S. media outlets. It's not clear what caused the mother to contact the school, though CNN reported on Sunday that she did so after her son sent a text saying, "I'm sorry." So, listen, there's a lot going on with that situation. It's a very unfortunate tragedy, and we all have feelings about what's happening in our country and in our culture right now. I think we can agree on that. But the key takeaway there is that the school had an advanced warning, and it doesn't seem like actions were taken to the level of extreme emergency of which the mother alerted the school to. But in the New Jersey situation, we had the police have a threat show up on TikTok, which we know is where a lot of people go to chase clout and to try to get views and clicks and everything else, right? And these juveniles, not thinking straight about it, probably had this idea they could do that, right? And maybe they were legitimately planning an attack, which either way, the authorities took it seriously, which is how it's supposed to work, regardless of whether or not it's realistic. The threat should be taken seriously. It was. They were apprehended. The schools were closed. And we didn't see a similar event happen in New Jersey today. So that's just something I want you to be aware of. It doesn't always work the way it's supposed to. Donald Ducati, what's up, MP? What's up to you, too? I appreciate the super chat. Thank you very much for that. So these things are probably going to keep happening because we just saw what happened in Appalachia. Then New Jersey has this, what could be a copycat scenario, what could also be somebody trying to capitalize on the current environment in the sense of what's trending, right? I don't have faith that these things are just going to go away. So please be vigilant. Please be on top of what's going on, with your children. It doesn't matter what they do, where they are. Like you should have that risk assessment. And like I said, you should have that baseline of what's acceptable and what's not in the sense of that heightened risk, and do whatever it takes to protect your kids. I mean, I don't know what else to say. So, Christo, good to see you as well. And also, apparently your name makes me revert back to puberty. So I'm having a great time now. Let's see. What else is happening in our country right now that's chaotic and also feels very, let's just call it, third world or even war zone-like? It's a little bit odd, but it is something that I wanted to mention because this is an example of how random attacks can just occur out of nowhere. This person is likely to have had a mental break or to have just become a crazy person. Like, there's no evidence so far that they're related to any organized entity or anything along those lines. This couch individual. But the attack here is very indicative of what you should expect if these sleeper cells and these agents of chaos throughout our country are ever activated. Because there's no reason to assume it'd be any different. In fact, this looks a lot like what I would expect the MO to be. So be aware of that, okay? Now, man accused of shooting 5 on Kentucky interstate vowed to kill a lot of people, warrant says. Okay? Now listen, I hope you guys understand. I don't know the rules anymore when it comes to like what words you should say or not say and everything else related to the algorithm and all that stuff. I'm pretty sure even that's a word you're not supposed to say. But if you appreciate this information, if you want to like or share or subscribe or any of those things, I'll just keep saying the words to try to make things a little bit more comfortable. And hopefully that helps overcome the barriers that exist, right? And of course, there are some words that I just know inherently to avoid. That'll just have to happen. But like I said, I don't know the full list anymore. We're just doing the best we can, and your help and me supporting what we do here can help get that message out a little bit further, because I think I make some mistakes sometimes, if you know what I mean. So, the man suspected of opening fire on a highway in Kentucky sent a text message vowing to kill a lot of people less than 30 minutes before he shot and wounded 5 people on Interstate 75, authorities said in an arrest warrant. If you don't know, what just happened in Kentucky here recently, near London, Kentucky, is that an individual set up shop either on an overpass or in some nearby woods and just started shooting randomly at cars driving on I-75. That's what happened. I don't know what else to say. And they haven't found him yet. So he's still on the run, and there's still a manhunt going on in that area to try to find him. At least up over the last couple of hours, that's my understanding of where we stand. That's pretty wild, but there's more to it, okay? I'm going to kill a lot of people. Well, try at least. Joseph Couch, 32, wrote in a text message, according to the warrant affidavit filed in court. In a separate text message, Couch wrote, "I'll kill myself afterwards," the affidavit says. I think I just screwed that one up too. Make sure you guys are helping me out here, because I'm just saying all the bad things tonight. The Lexington Herald leader identified the woman who received Couch's messages as his ex-wife. The affidavit does not describe the relationship between Couch and the woman who got the texts. The affidavit, written by Captain Richard Dalrymple of the Laurel County Sheriff's Office, said that before authorities received the first report of the shooting about 5:30 p.m., Saturday, a dispatcher in Laurel County got a call from a woman who told them Couch had sent her the text messages at 5:03 p.m. They did a cell phone trace. It didn't come back until 6:53 p.m., and that was about an hour and a half after the shootings occurred at that point in time. Now, here's things you want to consider about this. First off, in your vehicle, especially in the middle of nowhere on an interstate, right? Most people don't expect much to happen. Well, this happened. So do you at least have things in your vehicle to deal with some of this threat? And I don't mean, returning fire and trying to become Rambo in the middle of the interstate, because someone from a covered position or at least a concealed position that is already engaging you is going to have quite the advantage. But I'm talking about, do you at least have first aid with you? Do you have the ability to treat a gunshot wound in your vehicle? I mean, that's the bare minimum if you ask me. And then you have another way to call for help. What if you're somewhere where there's no cell service? What are you going to do? I mean, the minimum, do you maybe have a radio that could hopefully jump on to somebody else's frequency? Or perhaps you have a satellite phone or a satellite messenger, right? And in case you guys don't know, companies like Garmin, they make these little satellite messenger modules. They cost money. They have a monthly plan, of course, but they allow you to send out messages or call for help in just about anywhere. So that might be something worth looking into if you find yourself in rural environments where you lose cell service quite a bit. I'm just putting it out there. The ability to call for help and to treat a gunshot wound or any other type of, first aid necessity is important to have in your vehicle. And of course, I always have self-defense means as well, and I think that's important. But I mean, just because I carry a gun with me, doesn't mean I'm going to pull over and try to find the guy who's already lining me up with a rifle. Like that's a pretty bad idea. So I'm more concerned about having the first aid and having the ability to reach out for help. And that's what I think like a good priority would be, at least in my opinion. You probably have the self-defense too, but you know what I mean. Okay, so I think I saw something come in. Florida sheepdog. I got the impression Dad was trying to butch him up with hunting, maybe a gender issue. You know what? I mean, there's a lot of speculation there, and there's been a lot of weird evidence that came out about that. But I will say, there's a heavy debate there about, holding people responsible for the crimes of others and everything else. But there's also the liability aspect. And I mean, just like anything else, like if my dog attacks you, like I'm liable for it, right? And like if my child does something that causes property damage as a parent, I'm liable for it. So like there's a lot of things that already exist that would apply there, but the circumstances there is obviously where things could be a little bit questionable when it comes to how they're going to use it to leverage things against our Second Amendment rights, right? I think we all know where this is going, and that's something we're actually going to talk about right now regarding this shooting, a situation occurring in Kentucky where this guy is still on the run, okay? So here's what's up. This is why you should also be concerned about this, because these types of events will be continually used as ways to try to limit your ability and restrict your access to important equipment when it comes to defending yourself. They found a green Army-style duffel bag, ammunition, and numerous spent shell casings, the affidavit says. A short distance away, they found a Colt AR-15 rifle with a sight mounted to the weapon and several additional magazines. The duffel bag had Couch handwritten in black marker. So we already have all that information regarding, the weapon and everything else being used. But there's more to it. And like I said, this guy's still at large, which is scaring a lot of the local population. Rightfully so. You don't want a fugitive who just was willing to randomly hurt people, innocent people that they had no affiliation with. You don't want that guy around you, right? Like we all can agree on that, which is why you should be prepared no matter where you are. I know I might sound like a crazy person, right? And I kind of am. I'm a prepper. I mean, dude, look, right? But here's the thing. I carry a handgun just to go down to the end of my driveway and grab my trash can, right? And yeah, I have rural trash service out here. I know it's crazy, but it is what it is, and I'm good with it. The oil field has a very interesting infrastructure profile. But regardless, okay, I mean, yeah, my driveway's pretty long. It's like a quarter mile, right? But still, I carry a pistol because not only, for all I know, will some weirdo in a truck drive by and try to harass me, but at the same time, like, I've got coyotes on the property. We've got other things that freak me out, like moose. Like, I don't care. I don't want to face-to-face with a moose, but stuff happens, right? So I'm just always armed. And if this guy shows up on your property and you're out, hanging out in the backyard, just like drinking a beer, but you're not armed, I mean, that's when weird stuff happens. So I'm not trying to say you should live your life continually armed. I'm just saying, like, take precautions and be reasonable about the current situation, especially when there's a guy that is on the run in your locale. I mean, if this is public information, that might give you something to think about, okay? But here's what else you should be aware of. And this is something they're going to focus on now for quite some time. Let's see here. Okay. Couch most recently lived in Woodbine, a small community about 20 miles south of the shooting scene. Authorities said he purchased a weapon and about 1,000 rounds of ammunition Saturday morning in London. Kentucky has few regulations on purchasing guns and carrying them in public. The state's gun laws are among the worst in the country, according to a report by Everytown for Gun Safety. Oh, great. Like, I really appreciate their very unbiased reporting. Wow. Anyway, so if they say they're the worst, what they actually meant is they have some of the best gun laws in the country. A man who fatally shot 5 coworkers at a Louisville bank in 2023 wrote in his journal that he was surprised he could buy an AR-15 and 120 rounds in less than an hour. You mean he was surprised that the Second Amendment exists? Well, maybe he should have taken more history lessons. But regardless, you can see where this is going. They're going to keep pushing this narrative every time these things happen because how crazy. And then they're going to reference California and how they have their 10-day waiting period, which is also being struck down by a federal court right now, I believe, or has already been. I'm not sure. I'm not fully up to date on that, but regardless, you can see where this is going. They're going to keep pushing it out there, and they're going to keep letting you know why these things are not okay for us to have access to, and why we need waiting periods, and why we need to have, the one gun every 30 days stuff. They're going to try to emulate all of California and New York's BS when it comes to gun laws, and they're going to show that states that don't have them have this stuff happen, and that's why you should be worried. Just be aware, that's where it's going. So, this guy shot at a bunch of cars on a main interstate, and, I mean, people were surprised, flabbergasted, and of course caught off guard. Reasonably so. I'm not saying they should have been on guard, but I hope that this would give you something to think about in the sense of what you have preparedness-wise in your vehicle with you. If one of these people had been, more seriously injured but had no access to first aid, there could have been fatalities. From what I understand right now, there have been no fatalities, but 5 people are injured from being shot. So I'm sure they're not doing very well either. So, the other thing I wanted to kind of bring back full circle here is the fact that Kentucky also is closing schools in that area because of the threat level. So, we have a guy who's on the run, who is obviously willing to be violent, and they have a giant manhunt going out after him right now. And the schools in the area are being closed because of that threat level, right? So this takes us back once again to the risk assessment and the threat level and what should be being done in order to properly assess the situation, especially as someone who's in the area or someone who has children that are in school and everything else. Like, these are the takeaways you should be learning right now based on, school closures being kind of a big deal when it comes to affecting everyday life of most people. The other thing to keep in mind is that the other situation in Georgia had an advanced warning that there might be an issue. I don't know if they didn't know it'd be a shooting most likely, right? But an extreme emergency to me should be concerned enough to try to take some extreme precautions. Regardless, this guy wasn't involved with anything related to a school, isn't necessarily threatening schools outright or publicly, and they're still taking the precaution. So like I said, in one place it might work out the way it's supposed to, but in another it might not. It's still your job as a parent and as someone in the community to understand what you'll do and what actions you'll take if these things occur. Schools in several Kentucky counties closed as the search for a man suspected of shooting into vehicles along a major highway, injuring 5 people, continued into a third day. The suspect, Joseph A. Couch, 32, was charged Monday with multiple counts of attempted murder and assault. Now, be aware, this guy was in the Army Reserve, I believe. So just be aware of that. He does have some, at the minimum, basic military training. And there's a lot of people who are, comparing the situation to like a Rambo gone wrong type scenario because this guy has that training. But according to the military, from what I understand, is that he wasn't ever deployed or anything along those lines. So we're not talking about like a combat veteran, but we are talking about somebody who at least has been through that system, right? So an arrest warrant was filed for Mr. Couch, charging him with 5 counts of attempted murder and 5 counts of first-degree assault. Talks about the rifle, once again, all the stuff, right? The shootings began at around 17:30 local time on Saturday. Police initially said 9 vehicles were hit by gunfire, a busy north-south route on I-75, but they later increased the number to 12 cars. So this guy shot a dozen vehicles up before he had to run away, right? And they said he only shot 20 to 30 rounds. So, I mean, these things are very and I'm going to say this in an unfortunate way, but they're very easy to pull off, right? Like, we've lived in a relative sphere of safety for quite some time that allows us to be comfortable in our current state without considering that these things could even happen. But when they do happen, it's surprising with how effective they are, as well as when they don't catch the person, like how crazy that can be too. With modern technology, with drones and helicopters and everything else, thermal, night vision, everything, to not find this guy by day 3 is pretty wild, right? So like, be aware of that as well. But here's something that the police said to people who live in the area, and it's just another preparedness consideration for you to consider. You need to lock your doors, Kentucky State Police spokesperson Scotty Pennington said Sunday. If you have security cameras, make sure you're constantly watching them. Maybe keep your porch lights on, right? Basic stuff, but understand people do not lock their doors. People don't do that. They just don't, okay? Here's about his his military service. An Army spokesperson said Mr. Couch served in the Army Reserve for roughly 6 years, from March 2013 to January 2019, as a combat engineer, but was never deployed. Okay, so now you have the background. Now you understand where this is all going. And to me, like I said, I don't see evidence of this person being involved with any type of like entity, right? We have the Tren de Aragua stuff. We have the Chinese that have infiltrated the country. We have the Iranian proxies that are also here. We have all this stuff happening in our country at this extremely unsecure southern border. I don't think this guy's involved with that. It does definitely seem more like someone who snapped or something along those lines. Regardless, we might find out otherwise at some point in time. But he still was able to pull off something that was very egregious and damaging and still hasn't been caught. And at the bare minimum, I look at that scenario as being a likely emulation of what you would see if future attacks happen from some of those organized entities, especially in the sense of like a hit and run tactic. Guy sets up in the woods or on an overpass, no one sees him, shots are fired, vehicles are getting hit, people are driving and not even noticing what's happening because what are you even thinking is really going on in that moment? And then they disappear, never to be found again. If they don't catch the guy or they don't find his stuff or his vehicle or everything else like they did for this guy, how do they know who to identify? So just be aware of that. These are the types of things I honestly expect to see as things progress in this global conflict scenario and from these organized entities. And don't forget, October 7th seems to be a targeted date. It would be wise of you to take that threat seriously. It'd be wise of you to understand that during that period of time, there's a likelihood of something similar occurring, right? I mean, the guy was planning that exact type of thing, but got caught. How many of them did not get caught? Okay, so we'll jump back in the chat for a second real quick here because I like you all. I really do. Let's see. Somebody just mentioned something about a satellite phone. City Prepper 016, sat phone is smart have. Yes, I agree. I don't think that it's a reasonable expectation to think everyone can afford a sat phone and a service plan and everything else related to it. But that's why I mentioned some of those Garmin products where they have a minimum service plan with a very low barrier to entry in the sense of like the device itself is like a couple $100s, which is still expensive, but not the cost of some of these really high-end satellite phones. And then you still have access to using satellite servers to send emergency messages via text, right? You're not able to make a call, but you can send text messages, and then there's an SOS mode that says, hey, I need help where I am right now. GPS locate me. Somebody send someone, right? So like there's definitely some benefits there in the sense of being more prepared, especially if you're not in a part of the country where there's continual cell service. Yeah, Prepper Medic, I think he had a military background, indeed, which we just went over. So, yes, that is accurate, and that is something that I, assume went into some of his planning. Let's see here. Trying to jump in here. I just like making sure I talk to people. I appreciate this community. It's not just about me telling you all stuff. Sometimes I see some really good stuff in here as well. Let's see here. Savage Hunger. I was the last generation to actually take firearm safety in public school in the 3rd grade. Never had any issues around guns. Kids should be taught early the respect for life. I believe that as well. And honestly, I will tell you that I was in Boy Scouts. I didn't have firearms in my schools, but I did have access to firearms in the Scouts. And we never had issues with safety or anything along those lines. And here I am today, right? So, things have definitely changed in many ways. I might point towards the internet, right? Okay. So, what about this global conflict intensifying, right? I think what we just talked about gives you a good idea of what's happening here in the country and why you need your head on a swivel. But what about what's happening overseas? Because that's getting worse. And it really, truly is. And you really should be paying attention because it's like an any moment type deal. And you know what's the best thing a failing presidential campaign could ask for? A war. It generally does very good things to your ratings, right? Your poll numbers like to go up during those times. Late night coffee, can't go wrong. So, here's some contradictory information, and I want you guys to be aware of this. This is why I'm bringing it up. I'm not saying who's doing what when it comes to who's telling the truth, who's not, what's reality, what's not. I'm just giving you both sides of the equation so you can make decisions for yourself. But I think we see this going badly, either way you look at it. And I think this is going to pull us in further, which I think has the possibility of making things worse, okay? So this is from Ukraine, and it's from Al Jazeera, and this is from September 6th, okay? Ukraine military chief says Kursk offensive is working. Russia advanced stalled. Okay. Alexander Syrsky, Ukraine's top military commander, has defended Ukraine's incursion into Russia's Kursk region, saying the offensive was working because Russia had not advanced on a key area of the eastern front Ukraine for 6 days. Kiev launched its surprise offensive into Kursk on August 6th and supposedly had captured up to 1,300 square kilometers of Russian territory. That's pretty wild. That whole situation is pretty wild. I mean, I'm surprised things haven't gotten crazier already. Like, this is... In 2022, people would have been freaking out about this. So it is weird, but here we are, okay? Officials have said the offensive was part of a strategy to slow Russia's advance towards the strategically important town of Pokrovsk in Donetsk in eastern Ukraine. Speaking to United States broadcast network CNN, Syrsky said Ukraine was doing everything possible not to lose Pokrovsk, okay? Over the last 6 days, the enemy hasn't advanced a single meter in Pokrovsk direction, he said. In other words, our strategy is working. I'm probably saying that wrong. It's okay. We can get through. You understand what I'm talking about here. Now, this is what they're saying. It's working, okay? Harbor prepper, because coffee is an essential prep. I'm not going to argue that. And just in case anyone here wants a little tidbit of information, the best coffee to store, if you don't want to have to do anything with it later on, is instant coffee, because it's basically freeze-dried coffee. So it'll last forever, and all you have to do is add hot water, and you've got coffee. So there you are. If you want to store coffee to have like good roasted coffee in the future, where you'll have to roast your own beans, you want to store fresh green coffee beans in your Mylar bags with all the works, and those will last the longest. But I'm an instant coffee guy because I like the simplicity of knowing that the coffee will last forever, and that if I just add hot water, I'll be drinking coffee. So that's what I do, but there is another option. Moving forward, why is Pokrovsk so important, right? In the town of Pokrovsk, the vital Ukrainian town in Russia sites, okay? Here's why it's so important. Pokrovsk is a key transportation hub. If it falls, then Russian forces will cut off one of the main supply routes in the region. This will likely force Ukraine to retreat from Chasiv Yar, and the front line will move closer to Kramatorsk. For Ukraine, this would effectively mean the loss of almost the entire Donetsk region, which the Kremlin has fought to capture since the beginning of their invasion. That seems like a pretty strategically important place to defend, right? And they're saying that the Kursk invasion has done a good job of slowing them down when it comes to that. All right, this is from 20 hours ago. Now, according to Ukraine, the Kursk invasion is working because it slowed this scenario down. But Russia is right outside of Pokrovsk right now, okay? They're working their way in. They're capturing villages. It's getting closer and closer. But we also are getting this information from Russia. So, like I said, I'm telling you both sides of the story here so you can be aware of just how catalytic this entire thing is becoming. There's a lot of possible scenarios that can unfold here in a very bad way. Ukraine has sustained massive losses in Kursk. This is from, I believe, today? Yeah, September 9th, okay? Or maybe that's just the time right now. I don't know. Either way. It's a European outlet, I think, so, yeah, you know. Oh, this is from Tehran. Never mind. Even worse than Europe. Okay. Just kidding, Europeans. I still like you guys. I know you're here. Ukraine has sustained massive losses in Kursk. The Russian military has also destroyed over 1,000 units of Ukrainian military hardware. Well, what is that in relation to? The fact that Ukraine has lost around 11,400 troops since it launched its incursion into Russia's Kursk region. That's a lot of troops. 11,400 for a military that is literally ripping people out of buses in order to force them to conscript. Now, I'm not trying to argue whether or not they need to fill their ranks or anything like that. All I know is that they are desperate for more soldiers, and they've, according to Russia, lost almost 12,000 at this point because of this invasion scenario, along with 1,000 units of Ukrainian military hardware. Tanks, fighting vehicles, armored personnel carriers, combat vehicles, cars, artillery, and 24 multiple rocket launchers, 7 of which were US-made HIMARS systems. This is Russian information. I know it could be misleading, but I also know that we were just told by Ukraine here 3 days ago that everything was going according to plan, and the biggest reason for this incursion was to stop Russia from being able to move forward toward Pokrovsk. Well, during the past day, Russian ground forces supported by artillery and aviation have repelled 3 Ukrainian attacks near the settlements of Mikhailovka, Cherkaskaya, Konopelka, and Desyatoye Oktyabrya, as the statement read. Okay? I mean, there's a lot of losses happening here. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of conflicting information. But what I will say is that it sounds like Russia's right on Pokrovsk's door. And according to the press, the Western media, if Russia takes it, they take the main supply line and basically take the entire Donetsk region at that point. To me, that doesn't sound like we're in a good spot if you're on Team Ukraine. And if you're on Team Russia, it sounds like things are going according to plan, even though you lost 1,300 kilometers of your own land, which is kind of embarrassing. So either way, I'm just saying this conflict is not going well. Both sides are having problems. Both sides are conflicting when it comes to their information. And it seems like it's just getting worse, right? And right now, just from an outside perspective, American point of view, it doesn't look like Ukraine's being extremely successful. And because of that, you should be concerned because they've been fully funded by your taxpayer money for years now. Okay. What up, dog? Luke B. Good to see you, man. We also have Kanzi. You need at least 3 days to figure out what is true about the present wars before tossing out third-hand conflicting info from Western media. Well, yeah, exactly. And that's why I'm trying to share both sides of it. Because in 3 days from now, it might completely change. But that report from Ukraine is 3 days old, so that's a Western media outlet. And then what I just read to you is a report from today provided by Russia. So I'm just trying to make sure we have both sides in order to have a better idea and understanding as what's going on. But that's why I prefaced it with the fact that, like, these people don't necessarily tell us everything, right? Now, we also have the Iranian involvement. I want you to be aware of this because there's a clear push from Washington, D.C. to have a conflict with Iran. And the fact that Iran hasn't struck Israel yet after threatening it should tell you something. I don't know if that's because of negotiations, but to me, it's probably because of posturing. It's probably because they're working with their friends in Russia and all these other countries. They're building this alliance, this axis, right, in order to be prepared for full-scale war thereafter. Russia brands Iran important partner amidst reports of missile supplies. It's from today, September 9th. Russia has branded Iran an important partner as it failed to refute reports that Tehran is supplying it with short-range ballistic missiles. A Kremlin spokesman made the comments on Monday as the European Union said that it has credible information regarding the supply of missiles to Russia's forces waging war on Ukraine. Moscow and Tehran have drawn closer since Moscow launched its invasion in February of 2022, with Iran supplying its Shahed drones. A senior Iranian Revolutionary Guards commander has, however, denied that report. No missile was sent to Russia, and this claim is a kind of psychological warfare. Brigadier Fazlollah Nozari, deputy commander of the Qatam Anbiya Central Headquarters, was quoted by the Iranian Labor News Agency. I do the best I can here, right? I'm just some guy from the suburbs in America. Well, what can I do? Iran does not support any of the parties to the Ukraine-Russia conflict, Nozari said. They do support Russia. They've said they supported Russia in the past. We know they support Russia. But this is what they're saying. This is what's happening. And we're saying, the Western side of things, that they're supplying Russia with ballistic missiles, short-range ballistic missiles, but still ballistic missiles. So they're directly involved, but that's the same thing that we're doing for Ukraine in many ways, and Russia said if we can do that for Ukraine, then they can do that too, and this is just that quid pro quo type scenario going on between Iran and Russia happening publicly at this point, right? So, like, this is obvious stuff, but the reason I'm telling you about it is because we're using it, and when I say we, I mean, NATO and the West and everybody else. We're using it as another reason for why Iran is problematic and probably why we should do something about it, right? Like, I see this Iranian thing going catabolic at some point here because the people in Washington want this. They want this. And don't forget, Lindsey Graham just told you about how much minerals there are beneath Ukrainian soil. So we also have to save them in order to better our economy, because somehow that computes. But regardless, they definitely want to go to war with Iran for probably the same reason. Why? All the minerals. Ukraine warns Iran against providing ballistic missiles to Russia. Right? So now we have Ukraine getting directly involved with that conversation, which should tell you something, because this is how the proxy scenario unfolds. Ukraine's foreign ministry said on September 7th that if Iran provides ballistic missiles to Russia, it will have devastating consequences for Ukrainian-Iranian bilateral relations. Kiev said, or made a statement in reaction to recent media reports that Iran has sent ballistic missiles to boost Russian forces amid their ongoing invasion of Ukraine. For more than 2 years now, Ukraine has been suffering daily Russian terror attacks with all types of deadly weapons, including Iranian-made drones, the foreign ministry said. Moscow and Tehran have deepened military cooperation in recent years, with Russia receiving extensive supplies of Shahed kamikaze drones regularly used to target Ukrainian cities and infrastructure. Okay? Iranian government has denied providing weapons to Russia during the full-scale war. Now, all this goes into it more and more and more, and the types of targets that are being hit, but here's what you really need to understand. A White House spokesperson said that the U.S. is alarmed by the reports and that Iran supplying ballistic missiles to Russia would constitute a dramatic escalation in Tehran's support for Moscow's war. Washington has not officially confirmed that the transfer had taken place, but the Wall Street Journal said that the U.S. had informed its allies about the move in the past few days. So, this is a big part of that. We're watching the pieces being put into place right now, the justifications for us to enter a conflict with Iran directly, and for all of you to be aware as to why beforehand, so that we have some level of public support for it before these people lose their minds, okay? So, let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and read the chat here for a quick second. What happened to MP's dog? I mean, they'd be nothing. I mean, the dogs are good. They're all inside chilling right now. So, but I'm glad you're concerned about them because they are good dogs. All right. Let's see here. I just like talking to you guys. It's a good time. Let's talk about, Bobo World. NATO, Turkey joining BRICS. Yes, that's a good point. Turkey is a wild card, right? I wasn't planning on talking about them tonight, but Turkey is a wild card that you should be aware of. They are going to be problematic in the future. 100%, I'm just going to tell you that right now. It's going to be problematic. That relationship's going to be tumultuous, and at some point in time, it might not be a relationship anymore. So just be ready for that, because Turkey has a massive military, and I just don't foresee them maintaining that NATO membership, or at least involving themselves with certain NATO activities into the future. And if we are facing that global conflict in a direct action sort of way here in the near future, I don't expect Turkey to necessarily, join the West. So be aware, okay? And something else I want to mention is just that there were some drone incursions that just recently occurred. We had drones enter Romanian and Lithuanian airspace. In the past, that was considered to be Article 5 capable activity, right? But now, not so much, I guess. So just be aware of that. But we are having additional NATO countries having Russian drones enter their airspace, which could lead to more consequences, of course. So, speaking of drones, remember that whole Middle East thing? We're talking about all the global conflict stuff today, and right now the hotspots are pretty clear, right? We have Eastern Europe, Middle East, and then we'll get to Asia. So right now, we're moving over to Middle East. Yemen's Houthi rebels claim they shot down another U.S. MQ-9 drone. This is from today. Now, the Yemeni Houthis, is it Yemeni? I'm going to go with it. Regardless, the Houthis are a proxy of Iran. So keep that in mind as we move forward, because we just talked about the justifications for moving forward with a direct conflict in Iran. This is more of that. This is happening, okay? Dubai says today, Yemen's Houthi rebels claimed early Sunday they shot down another American-made MQ-9 drone flying over the country, marking potentially the latest downing of the multi-million-dollar surveillance aircraft. The U.S. launched airstrikes over Houthi-controlled territory afterward, the rebels said. The U.S. military told the Associated Press it was aware of the claim, but has received no reports of American military drones being downed over Yemen. Pretty sure it's not something they want to openly admit, right? The rebels offered no pictures or video to support the claim as they have in the past, though such material can appear in propaganda footage days later. However, the Houthis have repeatedly downed General Atomics MQ-9 Reaper drones in the years since they seized Yemen's capital, Sana'a, in 2014. Okay, so this is stuff that's happened before. Now, the big thing about the Houthis is that they are doing their business in the Red Sea, but they're also using weapons to do these types of things that are supplied by Iran. Saray offered no details on how the rebels downed the aircraft. However, Iran has armed the rebels with a surface-to-air missile known as the 358 for years. Iran denies arming the rebels, though Tehran-manufactured weaponry has been found on the battlefield and in seaborne shipments headed to Yemen despite a United Nations arms embargo. The Houthis continue to perform their jihadist duties in victory for the oppressed Palestinian people and in defense of dear Yemen, Saray said. Okay? Be aware, they're shooting down American military equipment. They are Iranian proxies, and they are using Iranian weapons to do it. So, why does that matter? And why is this happening in this area right now? Okay? Viv B, I need a cat, duck, goose stew recipe. Asking for a Haitian friend. That is rough. I'm pretty sure you're just supposed to eat it raw. Now, let's go ahead and talk about why I think this whole deal in the Middle East is going to pop off soon. Why it's likely to happen before the election. And how the biggest piece of evidence of this occurring is showing us right now, okay? Satellite photos show U.S. carrier strike groups in the Middle East hotspot. September 4th, 5 days ago. It's from Newsweek, so they have crazy ads all over the place. Just don't worry about it. Latest satellite images appeared to show 2 United States Navy carrier strike groups were operating in different areas of waters in the Middle East amid rising tensions between its ally Israel and Iran. Both the West Coast-based American carrier strike groups, led by the USS Theodore Roosevelt and its sister ship, USS Abraham Lincoln, were retasked from scheduled deployments in the Western Pacific Ocean as part of the Pentagon's plan of increasing military presence in the Middle East. This is something that you should just consider here. These carrier strike groups were retasked. They were redeployed and repositioned in order to maintain a presence in the Middle East. And they also fulfill the bare minimum requirement of the amount of strike groups required for military action in that arena. Like I said in previous videos, like I've said in previous live streams, the bare minimum amount is 2. If you have 3, it's on. 2 is like they could go for it if they want to. So just keep that in mind. And the ships are there with intent right now. The repositioning of the U.S. aircraft carriers came as the July 31st killing of Hamas's political leader, Ismail Haniyeh, sparked Iranian threats of retaliation against Israel. An exchange of fire between Israel and the Iran-backed Lebanese Hezbollah group on August 25th also increased tensions. These two 100,000-ton nuclear-powered Nimitz-class aircraft carriers can carry over 60 combat aircraft of various types, including fighter jets, airborne early warning aircraft, and helicopters, right? I think we all know what they're up to and what they do, but that's just information they wanted you to have. Now, here's the satellite images. There's nothing crazy to see here, but you can just tell the ships are there, and they're just kind of proving to us via OSINT that this is happening, okay? Now, the Abraham Lincoln was underway in the Gulf of Aden on Monday and heading toward the Red Sea with 3 destroyer escorts. This is the first time a U.S. Navy carrier strike group was spotted in the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea since USS Dwight D. Eisenhower left the region in June. So we're back at it once again. And of course, the Theodore Roosevelt is in the Gulf of Oman, which lies between the Arabian Sea and the Strait of Hormuz. Okay? Now, I just want you to be aware of the fact that these groups also have destroyers with them. They have all the support stuff that they would usually have. And they're more than capable of engaging in combat at any point in time. Okay? Now, here's the part that I want you to really think about. The surging presence of aircraft carriers to the Middle East has left a carrier gap in the Western Pacific Ocean to keep China and North Korea at bay. The Pentagon said it remained appropriately postured for emergencies in Asia and the Middle East, saying we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Well, one thing I want you to think about is all the speculation we've had through the last couple of years about how China is going to wait for the right time when we're too busy to deal with them. And right now, we've taken carrier groups from the Western Pacific and sent them to the Middle East to deal with the Israel-Iran situation, leaving a carrier gap in that area. And that's the concern we've had for quite some time, right? And the military is trying to write it off as saying, well, we can handle that. Like, we'll be fine. But what's happening regarding that region of the Western Pacific? A lot, actually. And so we don't want to forget China. And here's why. Escalating South China Sea tensions demand urgent U.S. response, September 9th, from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. It's almost like China might be taking advantage of the fact that we're not in the area anymore. A series of recent maritime provocations between China and the Philippines, by the way, which is our ally, just like Israel, near Sabina Shoal, a disputed atoll within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, have exasperated Indo-Pacific tensions. These incidents, coupled with others at the nearby Second Thomas Shoal, underscore China's growing aggressiveness in the South China Sea and the urgent need for a more assertive U.S. response to deter future provocations. The intensity and frequency of maritime confrontations between China and the Philippines have risen steadily since 2023. Most of these dangerous encounters have centered on Chinese attempts to disrupt rotation and resupply missions to a makeshift Philippine outpost on Second Thomas Shoal, which, like Sabina Shoal, is located in the Philippines' economic zone. Okay? But claimed by China. On at least 3 occasions in 2024, the China Coast Guard has employed a combination of aggressive tactics, including ramming, firing water cannons, and boarding Philippine vessels to disrupt Philippine RORE missions to Second Thomas. All right? This is happening. It's escalating. The naval ships are actually ramming each other. Like, that's not, just typical activity. And I also want you to think about the fact that China's ramming our allies' naval ships in what they're considering to be their exclusive economic zone. And we are not there because we're in the Middle East, because we're worried about Iran attacking Israel. So what is this teaching China in the sense of our priorities? It's just a consideration to make. Now, China is also using this opportunity to flex more on Taiwan, which is still a very possible risk scenario in the sense of a Taiwan invasion. Like, they can just go there at any point in time right now. Taiwan reports increased Chinese military activity near the island. This is from today. Like, this is all happening right now, almost as if the opportunity has suddenly arrived for China. China's Ministry of National, or Taiwan, sorry. China thinks it's China, though. Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense informed that over the past 24 hours, the Taiwanese military observed 21 aircraft and 7 naval vessels from the Chinese People's Liberation Army near the island. Additionally, a vessel affiliated with China's state agencies was detected in the vicinity. According to the Taiwanese military, 16 PLA aircraft crossed the median line of the Taiwan Strait and flew into the island's air defense identification zone in the northern, central, southwestern, and southeastern airspace of Taiwan. Aircraft, vessels, and ground-based air defense systems were dispatched by the Taiwanese army to monitor them. Taiwan has been governed by its own administration since 1949, and China doesn't think that's very good. So, stuff is still happening there, but we're just kind of gone right now. Allowing an opportunity for China to take action without immediate resolve or immediate repudiation. So, I am keeping an eye on that area just because right now would be a decent time for them to try something a little bit more aggressive than what they've been doing in the past. The other thing to keep in mind is that Iran has not done their counterattack that they publicly said they were going to do over and over and over again. And Iran would not do well to not follow through with said threat. It would lose them a lot of support. So to me, that would sound more like they have a plan, and they've shared that plan with their proxies and probably with some of the other groups affiliated with them in order to maintain support and show that there is an action on the way, but they just don't know what it will be yet in the sense of the attack itself. But I'm sure there are plans in the works, and I'm sure that they have some way of saving face in the meantime until said attack occurs. So all these things could be happening. And for all we know, and I just want to bring this back to domestic issues here on the homeland, for all we know, Iran could try to associate themselves with something that happens here on October 7th or in that time zone and allow that to be the retaliation that they said was coming. So just keep that in mind. I do not like what could occur during that time. And I also don't like the fact that we have all these things happening at our schools. Our society has lost all respect for human life. Your local and small communities is what is really going to keep you going, right? People who care. But if you get to these major population centers, there's a large portion of people who don't care. They might not be the majority, right? But if 10% of 1 million people don't have any respect for human life, that's 100,000 people that don't care if you get ran over by a car, right? And that's a lot of people. So just keep that in mind, but that's unfortunately what we're seeing happening here in our country, and it's very sad. So, I appreciate all of you. Tactical Matt Foley. We are not handling our business right here at home. We cannot handle other people's business on the other side of the planet. I know. I agree. But the military-industrial complex needs us to keep writing checks. So, do we want them to write those checks there or here? Because I have zero doubts that if we were to pull out of all the military engagements that we have around the world right now and come home in order to restore what we need to do here at home, somebody would make sure that those checks were still getting written, even if it meant that they had to be written from within our borders, right? So, I'm not saying I am going to ignore the problems happening abroad because of that. I'm just saying that's a concern I have, even though I agree with you that we need to fix things here at home more than anything else. So, here we are. Great times. But you know what? That's why we prepare. And as preppers, you shouldn't have to worry about this stuff. You should just know about it. I'm not scared of these things occurring. I'm aware of the possibilities so that I can react to them appropriately when they occur. Not so that I can panic and run around at a Costco in the middle of the bum rush, right? And have to fight somebody in the parking lot because they want all of my toothpaste. So, if you want to be in the private live stream tonight, you can hit the join button down below and become a channel member, and you will be able to hang out and chat for about an hour, which is my way of saying thank you to those who support the channel directly. You can also join Subscribestar, which is $5 a month, but it does have the privilege of the private live streams as well as direct communication, preparedness incentives, and occasional exclusive content. So I'll put that link in the live chat right now if you want to check it out. But that private live stream starts here in just about 10 minutes. And it is going to be listed on the feed of your Subscribestar page or on my channel. If you go to my channel page, go to community if you're a YouTube channel member, and there will be a post for you with the link to the private live stream. It's my way of saying thanks. You do not have to sign up. You do not have to spend money to be part of this community or anything like that. But people do request to be able to support me directly, so I've found an outlet for that, and I've tried to provide a way of saying thank you. And of course, if you wouldn't mind doing all the stuff, like button, subscribe button, share this video so other people might get this information. It helps a lot, especially when I'm really bad at filtering myself and saying some things that I know can be problematic when it comes to the algorithm. So I need your help, right? I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. But I hope this information helped you understand where we stand right now. I hope this information gave you some things to consider. I try my best not to just talk about the stuff that's happening, but I want to frame it in a relevance to preparedness. I want you to look at it through the lens of how do I use this information to better prepare myself, and hopefully that's what we were able to do tonight. Awesome to see you all. Gen X Gemini, I'm excited to see you next week as well. Adios amigos, says Desert1776. Christo, good to see you. Also, Lisa CC, thank you so much. You guys are amazing. Stay prepping, get prepared, and that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.